Some businesses sell a product, some businesses sell a service, but hospitality sells something much harder to define. It sells a feeling. It sells the way a room looks when someone walks in, the way a guest is greeted, the way an event flows without anyone noticing all the work happening behind the scenes. And that raises a really interesting entrepreneurial question. How do you scale something that is so personal? Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to The Reluctant Entrepreneur. My guest today is Nikita Khandheria. Her work sits at the intersection of design, operations, brand storytelling, and guest experience. She describes hospitality as emotional architecture, which personally I think is a fascinating way to look at it. Today we're going to talk about what it means to build a company around creativity, experience, and taste while still creating the systems needed for growth. We'll talk about founder dependency, letting go, maintaining a founder's voice, and how to build a company that can carry your vision without requiring you to personally touch every detail. And it all begins right now. Stick around. Hey, Nikita, welcome to the program. I'm excited to have this conversation today.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, my pleasure. So let's start off with an icebreaker, shall we? What's one thing most of the people who know you don't know about you?
Oh gosh, that's hard because I'm an open book.
Then this could be really awkward then. But
I feel like that's probably the hardest question. People that know me that don't know that, oh my God.
So maybe what's one
I think they know
trait that they associate with you that may not be accurate? Maybe it's a little false modesty. Maybe, not on your part, not consciously, but what do they assume you to be that you're really not?
So, I guess, okay. So one of the things that I think I've grown out of, and I think that a lot of people that have known me since I was a kid are not used to me having grown out of, is like level of competitiveness. So when I was a kid, I was even more obsessive than I am now. And so if there was something that I got into, I would need to be the best at it. And if I wasn't, then whoever was the best was in for me throwing things. I was really, really bad, right? And I think that my parents haven't seen as much of my failures, quote unquote, in business or, just struggles. And so I think that I've built up a little bit more of a tolerance to be a better person through it so I would think that was probably the part that they wouldn't necessarily know as well about me, that I've gotten better at processing failure.
Wow. Wow, that's insightful. When I started my business, I was 32, and you and I talked off air. A lot of people will comment that you're young to be doing this. When I was 32, society thought that was young, right? We keep recalibrating our version of what's old and what's young and what's the middle and all that. But, and I used to get that comment all the time that, here's a compliment and I'm young. And their expectations were, in many cases, lower than what they should have been at any age, because they just kind of threw me a bone that I didn't ask for and I didn't need. But that's just the way people are. But when I started my company, I had no desire to start a company. It was just through circumstance. I created this technology that I wanted the world to see. It's a tech company, but not one that you would ever order on Amazon. This is part of the electronics manufacturing industry. What goes on? We're the Wizard of Oz. We're what goes on behind the curtain that no one ever sees. We build all the tech you use. But at any rate, I didn't know anything about business. I knew a lot about tech, but I knew nothing about business. And when I had the opportunity to build this product that my industry or the employer I worked for, which was a manufacturer in the space I'm in now, had no interest in, try as I might, I thought, okay, fine, I'll just do it myself, right? Bit of a tantrum there. And I had no business acumen at all. So I thought, well, I got the tech stuff down. How hard can that be? How I got the tech stuff down. That was hard. How hard could business be? That's what I meant to say. Business, I'll figure it out. I'm a smart guy. Look at all the tech I've learned. I'm a smart guy. I'll figure out business. I didn't have a clue, Nikita. I made every bonehead mistake ever made. But the attributes, to get to the moral of the story, the attributes I started the company with were ego, bravado, super competitive. I was super competitive. I did not lose. If I thought I was losing, I would change the rules. I'd cheat. Basically, I'm going to win no matter what. Arrogance, naivety, poor assessment of risk. Those are horrible, horrible, horrible life traits. However, they were perfect to start the business because I needed to be naive. I needed to be ignorant. 80% of all businesses statistically fail. That's just a fact. And I didn't know that fact. I was arrogant. I was ignorant. I was naive. I didn't know that fact. I didn't know the odds were against me by that high a margin. So that competitiveness, which you've probably wisely learned to tone down, right, was really what got you started. It's what made you think, I'm 17 years old. What am I doing in this space? And you did it anyway. So that, to me, is one of the vital ingredients that made you successful. However, if you don't learn to tone down all those like super aggressive, traits and all the other traits, like in my case, like I had, they'll kill your business. So it's a lot like when you're driving a manual transmission car. It's like you start in first gear. That's competitiveness. That's arrogance. That's ego. That's bravado. That's, arrogance, ignorance, naivety. That's all those things. But you can't go far in first gear. You have to shift to another gear. And that requires a different set of traits that you either learn or acquire through hiring or whatever, and then, or mentorship or, whatever. And then that's not enough. And then the business scales more. And now you have to have a whole new magic wand and, magic spells and formulas and, things like that. So it's a constantly moving target. Have you kind of picked up on that? You must have, because you decided to drop, or tone down your competitiveness a little bit. So that something must have happened that kind of went, okay, Nikita, to yourself, like, we got to slow down, girl. This is going to cause a problem if I keep this up. Did you feel that, or were you just responding to criticism, or what happened?
First, I want to say that was so well put. I feel like I need to write that down because that is the way that I need to be describing this whole situation. I've been a very competitive person since I was born, right? And if I wasn't good at something, I think that my parents taught me the solution isn't to avoid it. So I'm a very like, when they say fight or flight when you're in a state of danger, I
Yeah.
am definitely the fight person, right? And I think that that's still entirely true. I think that, for example, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I was born math dyslexic. And so I was really bad at numbers. And everybody that I tell this to now is like, Nikita, you probably weren't and you're just confused, but I was. And my parents sent me to Kumon, and I went to Kumon every single evening. And then I used to go to Abacus, right? And then I would come home and I would do my math homework and I would study all of the questions that are going to come in the exam the next week, right? Because I went to a merit based school. So we used to have examination and then they would place you based on that. So instead of being like you're in first, second, third, fourth grade, it would be that you get tested and then you get put in the class that matches with you. So as a fifth grader, I could take math with a seventh grader if my aptitude was that high or my work ethic or whatever it took to get me
Yeah.
there. And so I think learning that at the ripe age of 9 gave me this, I don't know if it's naive, but this sense of if you're willing to work hard, you can make anything happen, right? I went to China for Math Olympics when I was a kid after having been born with math dyslexia, right? So I think that it was very interesting to see how it's a case study, right? And it was one of the first case studies in my life that I had developed for myself, which was you can be really bad at something, but if you're willing to work hard and work smart at it and employ the right resources, right? Like Kumon and Abacus and whatever else you need, you can literally be anything and get anything you want. And with that mentality of everything is possible, it's really hard to not want the biggest and the best, right? So if I played a game of chess and I lost, my brain would think that if I'm willing to sleep listening to chess podcasts every night and study every single move and live by the virtue that is wake up chess, sleep chess, right? And just live in that world, then I will be the best player because that's what happened with math, right? I didn't win math Olympics in China, unfortunately, but
You were
I made
there.
it.
You were at the table. Yeah.
Exactly. And there are very few people that made it there. So I think from a very young age, that mentality of if you're willing to work hard, anything is possible, formed the basis and the framework for me to then be very competitive in the rest of my life. And I think that it's a very interesting balancing act where you want to live in that world where you genuinely believe anything is possible while still not having too much of an ego that stops you from being able to make the pivots that you necessarily need to when you're in business, as you've probably noticed, right? There's not one idea that'll work the way it is in your brain without having to adjust to demand, supply, growing pains, and all of these things. So I think that that competitiveness started to decrease as I learned that it comes with a sense of ego and like I need to stay on this path to be able to get somewhere, and realizing that you need to pivot a little bit. And so you need to have pride in what you're doing enough to be able to have the work ethic you need while still avoiding having the ego overshadow it and limit what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a constant battle between pride and humility. And, there's a space, you need both. My ego was a big part of me starting the company. And I loved my ego. He was my buddy. He was my bodyguard. He was there to protect me. He lifted me up when I felt down. He was a great dude, right? And and then at some point he was dangerous and he was causing me harm. And I like to describe my ego as both my propeller and my
Mhm.
anchor. And it's propelling me to do something everyone tells me I can't do in a space that I don't belong in. I'm in the tech world. I design some pretty gnarly, highly technical products. I travel around the world and speak to scientists and PhDs and all this, and I'm a college dropout. And I didn't even drop out of a
Oh,
cool
wow.
college. It's not like I'm not like Steve Jobs that at least had the decency to drop out of Stanford. I dropped out of a
Yeah.
community college, and
Oh,
so
wow.
I couldn't even drop out of a good college. So I'm like the worst of the dropouts, and I'm in this space that I have no business being in. And some of the industry made that pretty clear. Like, what's this guy doing here? A, he's kind of young, and B, he's uneducated, and all of that. So that's where my ego really, really helped me because I needed to think that I was better than all those other people in different ways. And so I'm very grateful for my ego. Now my ego lives in this little dungeon and I have the key. And every once in a while, when I look around, no one's around. I'm like, come on, buddy, let's go out and play, and then I'll feel good for a while. And then it's like, okay, nice seeing you. I'll see you again sometime, back in the dungeon. Keep me safe. But you started the company, a company at quite a young age. What pulled you into the idea of hospitality when your ideal, a person's ideal of like the perfect business or life's goals changes a lot from an adolescent, a kid. I want to be a nurse. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a fireman. I want to be a space person. I want to be whatever, what the typical young aspirations are. And a lot of that is fueled on in my generation, television, and your generation, television and bandwidth, screens and things like that. You had a different desire at quite a young age. You saw hospitality as something that would be like interesting or cool, or you gravitated toward that. What first pulled you into that? And what made you think I can build something here?
I mean, I didn't choose it, right? And that sounds so silly to say, but I come from a math computer science background, right? So it wasn't in the plans for me. I ended up, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, I built a couple of clinics in India. I built two clinics that were nonprofit clinics, and we used to diagnose women with breast cancer, conduct pap smears, and then refer them to other hospitals, right? And I did
Wow.
that at a very young age. And so I got a lot of visibility into the world of business in India. And I worked with this company that's really well known for fertilizers, and they're one of the largest families in India. And I actually had them end up investing in wanting to build a restaurant. And so I was just in the room listening to that. And I don't know if you're picking up on this, but I think the core of everything that is Nikita is I believe that you could do anything, right? And I think if you only live once and you're capable of doing everything, how can you not do it? Right. And so there's this scene in the B movie, and I don't know if this is how it goes, but in my head, this is how it goes. It's been like 10 years since I've seen it, but the little B is like, I can't believe I have to choose one job and live in it forever, right? And it's crazy that I don't get to do everything. And I think that that's what it's been for me. So while kids were like, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a nurse, I wanted to be something different every single week because I was like, I mean, how can I live with the idea that I would have the ability to save a life and I don't know how? Or I would have the ability to argue for someone in court that wouldn't be able to do so for themselves. Or I would be able to create these beautiful events that I wouldn't get to do. So this is my long-winded way of saying that from a very young age, I wanted to do everything. And so any opportunity that came by to try something new, my answer was always yes. So it wasn't, I want to get into hospitality to create something in hospitality and find my life's purpose here. It was, I've worked dependency law, I've worked in clinics, I've had a chance to experience those things, and this is another experience. I get the privilege to learn something completely new that I know absolutely nothing about. And like, that was the most exciting thing. Like, I get to enter an industry that I know nothing about, and I get to be the best at it. I get to try, like, I get to aspire to be one of the greats in this space. So I think that that's where it came from. So I don't think it was hospitality directly. I think it was, I'm so curious to learn about something that I know nothing about.
Well, it's amazing. Do you have this self-awareness now that you're on a journey and you're not necessarily driving the bus, that it's like, where's it going to take me tomorrow? Is there a sense of wonderment of like, I wonder what's next? Or do you have a plan?
Definitely. I think, yeah, and so funny. So I did an article with Merger Market, and they have decided to do one of me every year where they go, this is where you are today. Where do you
Ah,
think you're going to be in 5 years? And it's so interesting because it was literally 4 days ago. She calls me and she's like, so these were your goals for last year. Did you achieve them? And I was like, in some ways, I surpassed them, but I surpassed them in a very different way, right? A year ago, I had a national distribution company, and I was talking about how I'm going to get deeper into the food space. And then now I've hit a lot of those numbers, but I've hit it in a completely different industry. So it was very interesting. And there's definitely wonderment. Like, I'm so excited. And I think this is like the dorkiest thing, but like, I'll be sitting in bed and I'll be like kicking my toes up like the night before, like a preschooler. And I'll be like, I cannot wait for tomorrow because I have these 5 meetings that I'm so excited about. And who knows what's going to come of them, right? Like, I could talk to someone and there could be a whole new project that I can arrive at tomorrow, and the world really is my oyster because I'm at an age where I don't have responsibilities. I can take chances and I can follow up on things that, are high risk but could be really fun, and I never know. So yes, there's definitely a lot of excitement and wonderment, and I cannot wait to see what tomorrow brings.
oh, that's amazing. I do believe, without getting too weird, that life is all about destiny, and we are destined to be somewhere. And sometimes I think I'm in charge. It seems like this was my idea, but when I look back and honestly reappraise it, I realize that these were circumstances that kept limiting my options until I decided to do what I did. And now I feel like in many ways I'm in this cosmic pinball machine that, the little metal ball is just bouncing off all the bumpers, and there's a trajectory, but it makes no sense at the time. And when I look back at every job I've ever had before I committed to the world I'm in now, they seemed random, but once you get past it and you get a little higher altitude and a little bit more perspective, you realize that they all had some common thread. They all were experience that helped me in the next one, and you know, perspective that helped me in the next one still. And now at my age, I'm 65, and at my age, I look back and I go, damn, the I'll say the universe, just as a metaphorical placeholder, the universe had a plan, and it didn't always share it with me because I would have fought it. You know, I would have said, I know better. I don't want to do that. That sounds nerdy. What am I doing in this tech space? You know, I want to do something fun. I want to jump out of airplanes or something. But the universe had a plan for me that, you know, I wasn't there when they voted, but apparently I was, because looking back, there was a lot of seeds planted that led me to where I am today. And I think that's probably a similar journey that you're on, and probably most people are on, who yield to what's next, who have a huge amount of curiosity. I think when Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, the late Steve Jobs, gave a commencement speech at Stanford, I think he was the one. I could be mixing him up, but I think he was the one that just told, after his lengthy speech, he just said, "Stay curious." That was his advice. Stay curious. And I'm a curious person. I have this insatiable desire to understand how everything works, and even if it doesn't make a difference in my life, I'm just like, I don't know how that works. And I obsess about it, and I figure it out. And I think that curiosity is what leaves someone like you to go, hey, this is an interesting space. I don't know anything about that. And then you learn it, you master it, you excel at it. It'll be very interesting to see what's next. Your company, ERIA, it took me a little bit. I always loved the origin story of a company name. And then I'm looking at your name, and I'm like, oh, I see what you did. The last four letters of your last name. Very good. Very good. Lucky your last name wasn't something Stein, because that Stein would not be a cool name for an event venue, but and all the other things it does. But ERIA it's unique. It's easy to remember. It's four letters, and it just kind of has a cool factor to it. What did ERIA look like before the very beginning? I know it's morphed a little bit since you started it. Did it originally start as hospitality? Or did it start with food service, or did one cause the other to start out of necessity? What was the pathway ERIA took to where it is today?
Oh wow. So ERIA actually started when I was 13. I loved the idea. As I told you, I had a lot of ego, but I was like, I got to take over the world. And so I convinced myself, and this is really silly, but I used to say that my dream is that we rename Earth ERIA, because they're so close in sound, right? And this is something that I started saying when I was like 6, 7. And when kids would save their passwords, I used to be like, ERIA is going to be the password to everything. And now I'm going to go have to change half of my passwords because I just said that. But
That's right.
um,
There we go. All the hackers are signing off right now, and they're changing
I
their.
know. Oh no. I'm so glad it's not live. But yeah, so it was just something that from a very young age, I was like, this is what I want to do. And so my first clinics, they were under the name ERIA. And when I bought out my investors over at Dita's, which was the restaurant that we originally got funding for. So I raised investor funding. Okay, let's go further back. I think it'll make a little bit more sense. So when I built the clinics, we signed an exclusive deal with a fertilizer company. And we said that we want you to come and train the women that we're diagnosing with the ability to be able to grow their own crops, so we can give them economic independence and they can leave some abusive situations that they're in. And in return, we'll sign an exclusive contract where we'll only use your fertilizer to make up for the labor that goes into training them. Fast forward, they invited me to a conference. That's how we ended up getting the original funding, and they were the ones with the idea to have a restaurant. I was still in university as this was happening, and so I had a director of operations, and I would come sometimes, but the restaurant didn't, I loved the period of building it, but it didn't tickle my fancy beyond that, right? A lot of it was repetitive. It wasn't really feeding a lot of my curiosity. I had learned what I wanted to from it, and a lot of it now is just getting to the point of like perfection and striving for something that doesn't necessarily exist, right? It was like the moving target of excellence, but it wasn't something that I had as much pride in that I think you need to have to be able to devote hours the way that a Roger Federer or a real great does. So I started to distance myself from it, and I took my first draw from it, and I bought like 20 laundromats from here down to Chico, from here being Marin County down to Chico.
Yeah.
I sold those, rolled that into a CPG company, which I then called ERIA Foods because I had to come up with a name, and ERIA was the
That's the
LLCs that I
base of all the
had.
name. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly right. And it was something that I had to decide. Like I hadn't even thought about forming an LLC when I bought it, and they were like, "Well, you need to buy it in something, come up with a name, right?" And in that moment, I was like, "It has to be ERIA, but we'll specify that it's foods because I'm still under the impression that I'm going to take over the world and I'm going to have 100 different companies." So I was like, "Let's get specific with it so that we can separate it." ERIA Foods, super fun. We took it from a company that was losing 60,000 a month, and we took it national, got two, $10 million contracts. Ended up exiting that because it got to a similar state that the restaurant did, where it was running, it was doing what it was supposed to, it was profitable, it was great for cash flow, but it was now getting to the point that you needed someone that had a heart for manufacturing because now you're doing lot numbers and you're doing supply, you're just doing a lot of logistic work that is
Yeah.
for someone who at the core loves manufacturing. So we exited that, and that's when I decided to buy out my investors at the restaurant, and I said I'm going to go into events. Right, I had done two events, and it's funny, I was just telling the story. The first event that I had done was we did an event for Anthropic, and it was fun because it gets you as close to excellence as you possibly can be because you have unlimited time to make sure that every element works well. And you have, in a lot of, I'm very fortunate, touch wood, and very grateful in a lot of ways that we have unlimited budgets because a lot of our clients that we work with
Yeah.
have the ability to spend for experience. And so it was this beautiful experience where I got to go in there and I was like, I'm going to choose every single thing to make this the best experience that anyone can ever have. And at the end of it, it wasn't like a restaurant service where you were like, there were 10 things that went wrong and this didn't go right and this didn't go. It was everyone left being like, wow, this was memorable. This was amazing. And I cannot wait for the next. And so we called that ERIA because, again, that was the name that we used for everything. And I started to really love the idea that we did things slightly differently. There was at least one element that was a first time experience or just something different, whether that was like 3 weeks ago, I had a bride parachute onto our deck in Sausalito for her grand entrance. And like a
Wow.
month before that, yeah, I know, crazy. And it's so fun because they're like, okay, Nikita, we'll do it. Or like we had our fire extinguishers turned off, like our fire sprinklers turned off. And I did a fire breathing class for a corporate group, right, for their team bonding. And I covered the entire ground in sand and did a Hawaii themed wedding where only the parents thought that it was a black tie event and they were in black tie and everyone else was in Hawaii attire. And we had these like Hawaiian dancers in the space. And
Oh my
it was
God.
so much. Yeah. And we
That's
turned on
amazing.
Florida water. And we had this woman be able to like purify herself as she entered into marriage. Like we get to go crazy and have so much fun and come up with the next best thing. And I really feel like for the first time in my life, I am chasing this ever moving post of excellence. And I am so excited to get there. Like every day, I wake up and I'm like, what am I going to get to go to do today? Right? We're planning a part of Dreamforce right now. And I'm like, what more can we do? Can we get e-foils and have everyone e-foil in the lunch break? Right? What is something that we can do so that people leave this being like, this was the best experience of my life and I cannot wait for the next? And I think because we're so driven by that idea, and because it's so different, everyone's like, wow, ERIA is like your signature. Like I can see so much of Nikita in this. Like it's this childish person, childlike. I wouldn't say it's childish. I'd say it's childlike qualities where we just focus on getting to the point that everyone is having so much fun, and it's done in a way that we don't consider risk. We're like, yes, we will say yes to anything, and there are enough experts in the world that'll help us deliver on it, that I think that it's just such a novel concept in the world where you're used to this 3-course wedding menu, or you're used to like everyone sitting and tablescapes. And because the industry was so consistent in what they were doing, what we were doing was so different that everyone was like, it's so cool that you call it ERIA because it's literally a signature of you, and we see so much of you in everything.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What's resonating with me is it's easy to say if someone asks you, "So what do you do for a living?" Oh, I have an event company. We produce events, which is not inaccurate. You do. However, that is 1% of what you do. If I was you sitting on an airplane and the person next to me said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" I would say, I, I create experiences. I create lifetime memories for a living. That's what I do. I do it through events, but that's how I do it. I mean, in my world, we build equipment that in the manufacturing of electronics, specifically of circuit boards, the use of our product makes the electronic device more reliable. It's not, our machines don't build anything. You don't put a bunch of ingredients in one side and out pops a product on the other side. It takes the customer's product, does very specific things to it, and those specific things in totality raise the level of reliability for that product. So now I've gotten so tired of explaining what I do because it's so behind the curtain, it's so down the rabbit hole. No one even knows that stuff exists, and no one really cares, frankly. And it's super boring to someone who's not in that space. So but my ego would try and sell them on how smart I am and what I designed, and here's something you don't understand that I do, and now if someone says, which they do all the time, "What do you do for a living?" I say, "You see that phone in your back pocket? Yeah, I make it work. I make it more reliable. I make everything you depend on. I make the instruments in this airplane." And quite literally, we do. We make sure that you get to your destination safely because the electronics that's doing everything for the pilots don't break. And then I look and I pause and I go, "You're welcome," which is arrogant, but my ego still comes
No,
out from time to time. But
I
but
love
there's
that.
also a higher level. I mean, there's what you do, and then there's why you do it. And and I've started to focus later in my career on why, not how, not the logistics, not the all the separate ingredients. I, you know, One could ask a baker, "What do you do for a living?" Well, I purchase flour, I purchase yeast, I purchase baking soda, I purchase sugar, and I purchase eggs, and I purchase vanilla extract, and I have this equipment that mixes it all together, and I have these ovens. Okay, well, that is technically accurate. What do you do for a living? I make the best wedding cakes ever for the most important, memorable day on someone's life. That's what I do, or whatever the case may be. I think that if you can look at the why and the bigger purpose and the impact that you're making, that's what you do. That's your occupation. And all the logistics and supply chain and labor and legal and marketing are all the ingredients to produce that product. And those aren't what you do. Those are why you do, so you can get the outcome of something much grander than the sum of the parts, right? So the
I
outcome has
couldn't
to be
agree
bigger than
more.
the sum of the parts. And it took me decades to get to that perspective, right? And now everyone goes, "This guy's full of himself." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I'll take that. That's good ego. That's appreciation for the impact that even my nerdy little business can have. And your impact that you have on your clients is much greater. It's a bride's being able to tell a story of how the event planner allowed them to parachute into her own wedding, you know,
Yeah.
and people who learned how to survive a fire by having their smoke training at an event center, or you know, being able to
Or
walk
whatever
across the
it is that
sand.
week. Yeah.
No event center would allow them to pour, 2 tons of sand on their beautiful dance floor, but you did.
Of course. And I think that's kind of why we got into venues. So I started doing a lot of planning. And I don't know if I've told the story, but I work a lot, right? And I don't know if I made it clear, my parents work a lot, right? My work ethic comes definitely from them. And I've always seen them work so much that whenever we would take like a holiday or take vacation or time off, which I haven't in 3 years, but whenever we would, it would just have to be that much more worth it because it's such a limited period of time. And so we would constantly aim to do the biggest stuff that you can so it leaves the most amount of memory so that you don't need another one for a while because that was, satisfying. And so that's initially why I started planning. And I used to plan my family's events, and then my parents' friends would be like, you guys got to do this? Like, I want to do this. How did you do this? And so then they would get me involved in helping plan theirs. And then it kind of grew from there. Obviously, we also had the venue that kind of, even
That
as a
helps.
restaurant, we got to
Yeah.
start building. Yeah, exactly. But eventually, I realized that I need to own these venues because the stuff that we want to do no other venue is going to let us. When we
Right.
had a corporate party recently, we painted the whole place the color of their company. We branded our entire windows with decals. We put marquise letters. Like whatever we do, we just like to be so good at
All
that
in.
a lot of exactly right. And I think that's the way to live life to just commit to it. And so when someone says, "What do you do for a living?" I say that I make life more fun. And they
There
go,
you go.
"What do you mean?" Because I think that they're just a little concerned. They're like, "What does that mean? Like, are you
Well,
pushing drugs? What are you
is she a
doing?" I was
drug
like,
dealer?
"Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
it could
That's
go a lot
exactly
of
what
different
everyone thinks." And
directions.
I'm like, no, I'm like, I don't. What I do is I find a way to take exactly what you're doing and I just say, let's make it a little more fun, right? So even as a nonprofit, I had a nonprofit group that we did an event for recently and I did cannolis for them and I did like ice cream sundaes and it was a live station. Cost just as much as traditional dessert, but I had the CEO's face on it. So as they and like quotes of him, like quotes that he said on the back of the spoon. So people would take a bite and you would just see what he's saying. And it's so silly and it's so childlike, but it's just so much more fun than being like, okay, let me go pick up a tiramisu cup, right? And so I think, and like even like this, when you and I started this interview and we were talking about icebreakers and things, I didn't have this much energy. But now that we're talking about what I do, I just love it so
Yeah.
much that I sound like, I think it just brings out the childlike essence in me.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, it gets me to be so creative and come up with silly things like that. Or what did we do? Oh, I took a C-suite hydrofoiling. So they were flying on water in their suits and ties, and it was just the most iconic and funny thing in the world. And these people were just like falling into the water, and they were wearing full suits, and it's just so much fun. And I think that if I can bring even a little bit of that to every single event, that's the ERIA way, right? Like that's what we do at ERIA. Wherever we go, there has to be an element of this was time well spent because I know that time is the most sacred thing that we have and we just don't have enough of it. You only live once. I don't want you to ever go to something and be like, wow, in my off time that I had to enjoy something, I just didn't get to. Like this was not worth it, right? I want you to always feel the ROI. And if I can, the dream is that whatever experience I put together for you, I want to have you never have done it before, right? Like breathing fire, walking in a lily pond to go to a wedding, having to hydrofoil. I had one of my clients get their piloting license. He has an annual contract with us, so he pays us, whatever, $1 million to plan his birthday, his wife's birthday, his kids' birthdays, anniversaries, and a couple international trips. We got him his piloting license while his wife didn't know, and we had him pick her up from her like from their closest like private airport and flew her to the Hamptons to surprise her for her birthday, and it was just amazing. Or we another client of mine that's on an annual situation for his wife's birthday. She had a sonogram the same day. She's sitting in the doctor's office, and the window overlooks this like courtyard, and we had a full band and a ice sculpture carving person. I can't remember what his name was, but he carved out her name, "Happy Birthday." I don't know if I should say Dina. And he was just carving that, and she's just laying there like this, getting her tummy exam, getting her ultrasound, and the only view she has is this carving and this van. And then she went outside, and the entire friend circle is there, and it's just so much fun because
Wow.
I don't think that anything is going to top the fact that he put that much time and effort and it was so memorable and it was this experience. But it's just a series of those, right? Every year we try and top what we did the previous year.
Wow. There's so much separation between the stereotypical event planner, event center, which are, cheap plastic chairs and dried out chicken and, you know, and staff that, would rather be anywhere else. And, and the level of detail that you go through, that's talk about concierge level service, in a pretty traditional space. That's pretty outrageous in a good way. When you reached out to me in your email, you mentioned the challenge of knowing where to imprint your vision and where to let systems and people carry it forward. And that's really hard for a founder because the idea was born in our head. It's our idea. It's our vision. And no one can get in our head. And we may not be really clear about how to express that vision and all the conditions and that, in context where, that live in our head that we fully understand. How do you decide what still needs to be your personal touch that, only Nikita can do and what your team can safely execute without compromising your dream and your client's dream?
So I've been very fortunate that I've been able, like, my team is the absolute best. And I'm sure it's like, everyone thinks their kids are the best, everyone thinks their teams are the best.
Sure.
I'm sure I'm biased. But I spent so much time with everybody on my team. And so for this most recent project, for the marina, we had to hire a general manager. My HR team did 263 interviews. I
Wow.
spoke to about 16 of these people. And we started off, the first thing that we asked them, we said, hey, Nikita has absolute no work-life balance, right? And you being on our executive team won't either. We need people that genuinely love the idea of being so excellent at what they do, and we will invest in you. We will make you the best at what you do, but we need that commitment back from you. And that is the kind of person that we are looking for. And we look for people that have never been general managers. So the person that I've hired in my marina location, she has only ever been a server. She's never been management of any kind. And I sit with her for 12 hours a day and I'm like, let me imprint everything that I see in this company and take your zone of genius, right? There's a reason I brought you on. There's something that you are great at. And let's combine that with what the vision is. And I get to train them up from scratch. So they don't have any bad habits or different habits from what it is that we want in our company. And our culture is so strong that if you were to ask me a question about our company, I would say that even though we haven't rehearsed it, Andres, my director of operations, Zoe, my general manager, Chandani, my business development, any of the people that are on my team, they would give you the same words because our branding internally is just so strong and we know exactly where we're going and we spend so much time together just talking about that. We have so many calls and I mean, I spend the first 2 months being like, let's just really get to know each other. And I need you to understand this brand and I need you to breathe it, live it, and live it. Right. And so there's just so much ownership and there's so much understanding that I would trust any of them to be able to do anything from start to finish entirely on their own. Having said that, every single call that comes in for an event, and yesterday there were 43 that came in, I will take
Well,
every single one of them. Every call will start with me. I start on all the planning and then my team and I discuss it and then I'll do handovers. But every single person that books an event in the space has, or in any of our 3 spaces now, has to talk to me. And I think that that has a lot to do with, I mean, in 18 months, we've grown to 3 venues. Most people don't do that in 30 years, right? And I don't say that out of ego. I say that out of, I take so much pride in how good we are at what we do. And that's why people keep coming back to us and saying, let's do more, right? Last year, we did 1 part of Dreamforce. This year, they're giving us 2 parts of Dreamforce. We have to pay our dues, obviously, but I think anyone that works with us is like, we want to come back and we want to keep working with you because the way that you work and the way that your team works is unlike anything we've experienced. I had a client yesterday. She came to a corporate event that we did. And I didn't have much contact with her because she was just an attendee of the event, right? She texted me. She goes, I got your number from Wander, which is the company we did the corporate party for. I want to book my wedding with you. And I was like, okay. She's like, are either of these two dates open? I responded and I was like, are you looking at Sausalito, Marina, Corte Madera? Like, which one of our spaces? She said, ideally Sausalito, but if it's another one, it's fine. I texted her back. I said, the date is open. She said, okay, this is the menu. This is the count of people. I built out the proposal. I sent it to her. She paid $35,000 within 5 minutes of me sending over the proposal. And she said, I needed to be with ERIA because
Wow.
I know that I don't want Shivari chairs. I know that I don't want a traditional dinner, and I don't want what the standard of the industry is. Because even if there are people that are really skilled and will make it look really pretty, I want to have the best time ever. Like, I want my guests to be signing a guest book on a camera lens. I want my guests to be, e-foil. Like, I want my guests to see me breathe fire. Or with her, we're actually planning to have a magician train her, because we did this for another client, train her to be able to, like, she's going to come in dressed as, casual clothing, and then snap her fingers and it'll turn into the bridal gowns. And
Wow.
that, I think people just crave the ability for someone to go above and beyond and make their day, which is their biggest day of their lives, usually the most special day that it can be. And so it's crazy because once you experience it, I think people are like, okay, I want to do my vow renewal with you. I want to do my corporate events with you. And we get very excited for our clients.
And I mean, I can feel the excitement. I want to jump out of an airplane and do all the things that, well, I'm a pilot. So jumping out of a perfectly good airplane probably goes against every basic instinct in my training, but I get the greater point. Our equipment that we build relies a little bit on certain types of chemicals, and I'm not by any stretch of any imagination a chemical engineer, but I know a little bit about how it applies, at least in my world. And one of the things I learned is in the chemical world, for you chemist audience members out there, you'll go, oh yeah, sure. There's something called Hansen's law of solubility, which basically means like attracts like. So certain chemicals attract certain chemicals, and certain chemicals repel certain chemicals. I think like attracts like is a business lesson, a life lesson. But in the business context, when we used to lead with braggadocious, chest-thumping advertising, which we did, that was my buddy, my ego, we attracted good customers and toxic customers. We attracted trolls. We attracted needy customers, very low profit margin, very, very needy, took most of our energy and bandwidth just to serve them. And then we got tired of the sound of our own voice, and we switched to something I like to call conscious marketing, providing value, providing education, solving problems. I learned that the best way to sell our product is just stop talking about our product. Talk about the end result of our products. Connect with the customer on an emotional level. This is all basic stuff for people who have figured that out. They're like, yeah, duh, Mike, of course, you're the last one to the party. But yeah, I was the last one to the party. But what in the chemical world, like attracts like, when we switched to that more higher level, higher octave conscious marketing, we attracted the coolest customers, the best customers. We went from transactional to relational. So in the event world, you've got some large companies, and I think of like Wedgwood, as at least in Southern California, Wedgwood's a pretty big player, but they're very traditional. Nothing wrong with them. But if you want the Shivari chairs and the rubber chicken meals and crappy DJs that are doing this as a side hustle, that's what you get. I don't think if I said, can we cover the dance floor with sand? Can we have fire pits? Can we have brides arriving on a parachute? A, they wouldn't know what to do, and B, they would probably, their corporate rules would prohibit it. The insurance rider couldn't be written for that. But I'm imagining, because of your energy, because of you being you, you are attracting clients that think outside the box or are open to hearing ideas. I think you're experiencing, whether you realize it or not, the Hansen's law of solubility, the like attracts like. And because I don't think any one event person can talk about all the anecdotes that you've talked about in the last 15 minutes or so. That might be once in a lifetime for them to have that request. And this almost seems, I'm sure it's not daily, but it almost seems like a regular occurrence with your clients.
It is. And I think, again, I keep going back, and I don't know if this is my childhood or what it is, but I really feel like so much of my younger days formed who I am today. One of the first few movies that I watched, and now I make it a practice to watch every year, is Three Idiots. It's a Hindi movie. It's one of the only Hindi movies that I really watched growing up. And the main character in it is he's this very curious guy. He's a lot like us, but he's obsessed with the idea that everybody in the world is chasing success. They've forgotten that excellence is what we need to be chasing, right? And he tells a story about this lion, and he says that if you scream enough times at a lion and you whip enough times, the lion will sit on a chair and he'll listen to what you're saying. But you don't say that he's happy. You don't say that he's brilliant. You don't say that he's intelligent. You just say that he's well trained. And
Yeah.
isn't it so sad that if you get to live once, that we're all aiming to be well trained? We're all aiming to jump when we're told jump, right? And I think that his idea of just be curious and chase excellence, just be the best at what you do and really love it and find what your zone of genius is and just dive head into it, right? Dive head first into it and give it everything that you have. That's when you will find that success will come, right? But focus on being excellent. And I think that for the first year and a half, if you look, we didn't do any media. I didn't do any social media. I didn't do any storytelling. I didn't try and beg people to come to my space. I just said, whoever I have, I am just going to be the best at doing what I do. I'm going to hone in on my skills, and I'm going to make it such that I don't need to go tell anyone what I do, because my clients will go do that for me.
Yeah.
So the reason that I continue to get these clients is because they all go and they are my biggest cheerleaders. Majority of our clients are word of mouth. We've only started to do social media. This is my third podcast ever because I have just said no. I said that I don't have the time to devote to doing marketing because right now I just need to be excellent at what I do. I need to figure out how I can make it such that every single event that we do, and I mean, obviously there's going to be exceptions, but I want to get to the point that I can say without a doubt in my mind that I am really good at what I do and everyone is going to leave being happy. Because before that, what am I selling? Right? Like I'm not selling anything. I'm selling the idea that I'll do a good job. No. And so when you say like attracts like, I think the main reason that we get these clients constantly is because every single one of them we excel at. And then they go and they tell their friends, and the friends that are at those events are like, oh my gosh, whether we do it at this location or not, we need Nikita. Right? And like, okay, one of my other clients, we flew in a recording artist from Israel and we rented out this yacht, and it was a very casual birthday party. 7 out of the people that were at that birthday party called me the next day and said, hey, how do we bring you in on an annual contract? Right?
Wow.
I didn't have to do any marketing. My work speaks for itself. And I think that's why we continue to attract like-minded people, because people that see it and people that are successful and people that are good at what they do, they see those qualities, right? There's a reason why the greats like to hang around each other, right? Even if they're across different industries, it is just so much fun to be around someone that loves what they do and is just really, really good at what they do.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we focused on.
And you're getting something no marketing budget could ever get, no influencer could ever provide, no ad could ever convince. You're getting clients that say, yeah, and pardon the gender-oriented phrase, but I got a guy, I got a gal. You got to talk to
Yeah.
my person. And those are priceless because they're already emotionally connected to their friends, right? And those
Yeah.
bonds go super deep. And when that super deep friend, true friend, family, whatever, says, you gotta call Nikita. She's absolutely freaking amazing. That carries more weight than you can script, artificially through an agency, right? It's organic, it's authentic, it's real.
Exactly. And they're excited to go do it. So it won't even be like I have
Yes,
a
they're not doing you a
client
favor.
that no,
They're
they're proud. They're like, wow, you will not believe what I found. I am proud to make this recommendation because it's going to reflect as good on me as it does, on Nikita. And I think that that's the difference, right? Like I got a client the other day who said that he's never celebrated his birthday before. He was like, I'm just not a birthday guy. I don't have the time. And like, I'm not 5 years old anymore. I don't need to celebrate my
yeah,
birthday. I'm a 60-year-old man. But I was told by the group that he works with, I did an event for someone in that fund, and the guy was like, "You got to do this because you need to live life, and you're not living life if you're not
Mm.
having Nikita plan this stuff for you." And so I planned his birthday party, and he signed an annual contract, and he was like, "Hey, I want you to plan this every year." And I was like, "It's so amazing that he went from not celebrating at all to being like, wow, it is worth celebrating. Now I want to do it constantly." And that's the stuff that makes it feel like I am getting excellent at what I do.
And you
I
didn't
mean,
just
excellence is
provide an event,
obviously,
you changed his life. You changed the way
I
he
changed his life. And
perceives his
yeah,
value
exactly.
in life. And you changed his perspective through an event.
And now he makes time to do these things because otherwise a
Yeah.
birthday could be just another day, right? God knows that I've spent a lot of my birthdays being like, this is just another day. But now I'm like, no, it isn't just another day. This time will not come back. And I want to make the most of it. And if I'm going to make the most of it, then I'm going to want to keep doing it because it's going to be so enjoyable, right? And I think that that's what we do. Like, I'm in the business of making life a little bit more fun.
Yeah. Yeah. That's for sure. I'd say, breathing flames and parachuting and all of that, learning how to breathe in smoke, that's an adventure. You're really stripping down the conventional rules of what an event should be and rebuilding it so that it actually makes an impact on the client, the guests, all of that, which is quite a magic trick. You talked about excellence, working for excellence. One thing that I learned after decades in this space is when I had a particular problem, say we had a cash problem, which we did pretty much every day the first few years as a manufacturer, I concentrated on solving the cash problem. And I was always good. If I focused on one thing, I was bull in a china shop, man. I would get it done, no doubt. I would chase cash. I would get cash. We could cover payroll. The problem was it wasn't profitable cash because I just took deals and I was good at making deals, not profitable deals. Then I realized, oh shoot, all my efforts to solve this problem just created a new one. So I then focus on that one. And I would solve that one at the expense of yet another one, right? Everything has a consequence. And you throw a stone into a pond, there's that ripple that goes out in every direction. So what I eventually learned was that focusing on one thing is never the solution. The solution to revenue, the solution to profit, the solution to cash flow, the solution to market share, the solution to all the KPIs associated with running a business are not to focus on those individual KPIs. Make great decisions. Pursue excellence. And just make great decisions. The KPIs are not the goal. The KPIs are the scorecard for the decision making, for how you strive for excellence. If you are making what you think are great decisions, making what you think are excellent choices, and your KPIs don't show it, work on the choices that you're making. Don't work on the KPI because you'll solve one at the expense of every other. You get that ripple, which is very disruptive. I was both an arsonist starting fires in my business and the firefighter putting them out. And that kept me very, 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 very busy. And I confused busyness with productivity. Hey, we're successful because I'm busy. Look how busy I am. Wow, I'm doing great. I'm all this in a bag of chips because I'm busy. I was just busy fixing things I broke, putting out fires I started. And so, it sounds like you avoided that trap. You had some insight that I wasn't born with. I had to learn it. You were, apparently saw that early in your career, which is great. What's next? I only have a couple more questions because we're about out of time. But what's next? I was going to say what's Nikita 2.0, but you're way past 2.0. What's Nikita 20.0?
I think, and this might address what you were saying previously whilst answering this question, but I think that I see the world as this big space that you can make anything happen. And obviously that can be overwhelming sometimes. And so what I've developed for myself is I've developed a compass. So I sat down and I refine every year. I refine this idea of what is my dream life, right? If I had a magic wand and I could be a wizard for a day, what does everything that I want to have happen look like, and what does that look like at the end of it? And I use that as my compass through the year. So every single decision that I make when I don't know what to do, I look at my compass and I say, okay, this is where I want to be at the end of it. What does that mean for this decision? And it can be something as silly as like this morning, I was like, do I want to go for a run before I had my big Salesforce meeting, or do I want to go to the gym so that I'm a little bit more like I get out my anger energy, right? And I said, at the end of the day, this is where I want to be. I want X, Y, and Z, right? And I think that might be a little too much to get into, but in order to get there, this is how I want to present in the world. And so I'm better off doing X. I'm better off going for a run this morning to get rid of some of my energy so that I can end up showing up the way that I want to. And so that compass is what drives me. So if you ask me today, what does Nikita 2.0 look like, 20.0, whatever we decide is the 0.0, I don't know, because it's a product of every decision that I make to get me to that endpoint. But what the middle ground looks like, so let's say that's 50 years down the line, I don't know what the next 49 years are going to hold. I just know that I'm going to keep making decisions to take me closer to where I want to be at 50.
Nice. That's
Right?
good. Yeah. Where do you want to be at 50?
I think that, I mean, I would love to take my company public by the time I'm 30, 32. Then obviously, I it's so odd to say this, and this might have been a better answer for your icebreaker, but I want to be a traditional mom after that. I was really lucky that my dad had me very late in his life, and so he was able to satisfy every part of his ego,
There you
and
go.
so he was
Yeah.
able to be just a dad. And so even when, like, there was a lot of, in India you have a lot of help, right? And so even the moms that had a lot of help, didn't have anything else going, they weren't working, they weren't doing anything, even the events that they didn't attend, my dad was there, right? So anytime I did anything, whether it was like a fashion show, whether it was I said that I was starting a daycare, whatever I was doing, he was able to be there so wholeheartedly, because everything that he wanted to achieve in his professional life, he was able to. And I want to be that for my kids and for my husband. So I want to focus on satisfying everything that I want to by the time I'm 30, 32, and then exit my company, feel really proud, leave a legacy for my children to look up to, because I want my girls to be able to be like, wow, if mom was able to do this, we can do anything. And then I want to have a very traditional life. I want to go buy a huge ranch and raise some cows and milk them and collect eggs and just live a very good life and make my life about my next generation. So I make every decision with, obviously it's a 7-page document as to what I want when I'm, 50, but this is like the highlights of it. And so at every step, I go about figuring out how am I going to get there. So the reason I chose to run this morning instead of going to the gym is I said that I want to show up as a very calm and collected person, because I think that's something my kids can look up to more.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. You may have partially answered my last question, but I asked this question to every guest. How, I think your entrepreneurial journey started when you were 13. I think that's what you said. How did 13-year-old Nikita define success? And how does today's Nikita define success?
I think I'm very lucky that even though the specifics of it might have changed, I think when I was 13, I was just chasing excellence at anything and everything that I did. If I played golf, I wanted to go to St. Andrews and play national level golf. If I played rugby, I wanted to play for Seven Nations. When I did swim, I wanted to play at state champions, right? And so I think that's the way I looked at it when I was 13. And that's what I did. Like all of the things that I just mentioned, I did all of those things, right? From 13 to 17. And I think today too, I just really want to be the best at anything and everything that I do. And right now, that's the event world. So I look at people like my idols when people are like, who are your heroes? Roger Federer. Roger Federer is a hero. Arnold is a hero. People that are just the best at what they do. It doesn't matter what industry it is,
Right.
but the discipline, the love, and the person that it takes to get to that level, that's my hero. Right. And so I think that success for me when I was a kid was being them in whatever field I choose. And I think it still is.
I'm considering this particular episode a little bit like an event. And and it's in that it's transformational. I know my audience of entrepreneurs, people who are in it right now, people who think they're out of options, people who think, okay, I'm a failure. I've blown it. I'm going to go back to corporate life or whatever. I think the story you're telling, the experience you've shared, the inspiration that you provide is like the equivalent of a bride jumping out of an airplane, landing at the threshold. I think you just provided an event that allows entrepreneurs to hear exactly what they need to hear, exactly when they need to hear it. And I think you've elevated the art of business to an experiential level, and just being the best at what you do, and the passion which just screams through the electrons that are connecting us right now. And I think that, and I'm not just blowing smoke, I would not say something rather than say something insincere, but I do think that you can't fail. And I'm going to be really curious to follow your path, at least the one that you share on any social media over the years, because it seems like anything you touch will be successful as long as you don't change the pattern of striving to be excellent. Jim Collins, the author Jim Collins, wrote a book several years ago called Good to Great. And I don't read a lot of business books because I think a lot of business books are, the author's successful only because people are buying the business books and paying for the event to get pumped up. Tony Robbins' world. Not that he's bad, but his success is largely based on getting people to buy into his success. And I think that in your specific example, you just strive for excellence in everything you do. Whether the next thing is, starting an airline, or the next thing is, something that impacts the world. There's so many lessons that are just popping into my head. I'm going to have to create a whole nother episode just to talk about the lessons from this conversation. One of them being that you wouldn't think that an event center could make an impact on someone. You think they can throw off a good bar mitzvah, they can throw off a good wedding, they can have a good corporate meeting. Okay, fine. So can a lot of event centers. Serve the meal on time, make sure the event's clean, make sure the customers are reasonably happy, take the money, next. Almost like a Vegas wedding chapel, it's like next. In your world, you've taken something which could be considered clinical as just running an event, and turned it into something so way beyond that. I think that philosophy will not fail you in anything that you do in the future, as long as you have that same basic core drive, core belief, core discipline, core goal, to just strive for excellence. Then there's really nothing you can't do. So if I were you, I'd be lying awake at night knowing that anything is possible. What do I choose next? That would keep me up at night, because if I could have anything in the world. I used to volunteer for Make-A-Wish. I used to be a wish granter many years ago for Make-A-Wish, and some of my favorite wishes were shopping sprees. And it's funny, you tell a kid, you take them into Toys R Us, or back then, say, okay, you've got 30 minutes, fill your cart. They almost never were able to fill it because they couldn't decide what they wanted. They could have anything in the store. It was limitless.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't a half hour. It was probably 15 minutes. But they were under so much pressure, knowing they could have everything. They couldn't choose almost anything because they didn't want to put stuff in the cart and not have room for something that they found 10 minutes later, right? And I think that would be my dilemma. If I knew I had the Midas touch, if I knew I could do any business, anything I wanted, I don't think I could choose which one, because then it wouldn't be about analyzing risk. It would be analyzing fun and passion and love and all those things. So anyway, Nikita, ERIA, for those of you who, and I hate to just call it an event center because it's just so much more than that, but if you want the experience of your life, if you'd like to get more information on ERIA, if you're watching this on YouTube, right down here below me, it says see more. click that, and the URLs, the contact information for ERIA's company will be there. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, go to that podcast app, look at the show notes, and that information will be there as well. Nikita, thank you so much for really inspiring me, and I know my audience in your journey. You haven't been on the earth a long time, but you're making an impact. You're an asteroid that slammed into the earth and shaking it up. And I wish you continued, I'd say good luck, but obviously you don't need that, continued success. And wherever the business gods choose to whatever door they choose to open, I know you'll go through it. And I'm anxious to see what's next on the Nikita domination of an industry, revolutionizing industries. I'm very interested to see what's next.
I appreciate that. And thank you so much for taking the time and chatting with me and letting me come out here and talk to your audience. I really appreciate you making the time.
Well,
and being such a good host. And so
thank you. Thank you. Well, you're a great guest. So I guess we're both charter members of the Mutual Admiration Society. So keep up the great work, and I look forward to hearing even greater things about you. So again, thanks again for all the generosity of your time and your insight.
Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.
That's a wrap. Thanks for being part of our Reluctant Entrepreneur family. We've been very busy recording future episodes with amazing guests, so be sure to subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. If you're an entrepreneur or know someone who would make a great guest, of course, we'd love to hear from you. Visit reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com, where you can apply or recommend a guest or just learn more about the show. And don't forget to check out my newest series, Reluctant Lessons When Businesses Go Wrong. On this series, we dig into high-profile business failures and the story behind it all. We've already profiled several companies with more on the way. As it turns out, there's absolutely no shortage. Check out the Reluctant Lessons series on this channel. And if you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon and as an audiobook on both Audible and Amazon. And finally, to everyone listening or watching, if you find yourself stepping into entrepreneurship, whether that was by choice or by circumstance, remember this: sometimes the path we never planned becomes the journey we were meant to take. Thanks so much for being here. I'm out of time. I truly appreciate all of you, and I'll see you again soon.